Hello and welcome back, and today I want to show you guys exactly what goes on inside the Synology DS720 Plus. Now, the majority of this recording is going to be done down here, so I'm down here at the moment and I'm sure I'm way too close to the mic, but the majority of it I'm going to be all the way up here because let's face it, this is what you guys want to look at the most during this video. Now, a number of you, just like me, when this first came out, were kind of confused about what was going on with the memory inside this device. There's other things you might want to look at because the architecture and physical build of the DS720 Plus is actually significantly different than that of the 718 Plus that came before it. Now, a number of you might be watching this video simply that you want to know about the memory arrangement inside this device, and of course we will get to that. But other of you may wish to want to see what the inside of this device is like, so you know, rather than take apart your own NAS, you want to watch me strip this thing to pieces, which I'm going to do. So do remember that I'm doing this so you don't have to. Bear that in mind. And if you do disassemble your NAS, you may completely invalidate your warranty. And if you don't treat the media inside carefully, if removing it and putting it to one side, you may destabilize your entire storage array. So do bear that in mind. But throughout today's video, I'm going to take this apart, show you guys how I do it, and more importantly, hopefully solve some of the mysteries about the hardware inside this device. I'm hopefully going to do this kind of video with each of the new Synology releases, along with a few of the new QNAPs, but without further ado, let's get this device stripped down completely. Also, my laptop running in the background is running OBS, which is recording the audio for today's video, but also doing stuff in the background. And I've got a few NASs on the other side of the room. It's quite hot today. It's, what day is it today? It's been recorded on the 24th of June, which is quite hot here in the UK. So the fans on a lot of the NASs in my environment are ramped up quite high. So there may be a bit of background noise there. I do apologize in advance, but let's get started. So this is the chassis of the Synology DS720. It's a 2-bay NAS there. It's got an Intel Celeron CPU. We've got the NVMe bays there at the base, and we've got a fan there at the rear. To start dismantling this device, the first thing we need to do is remove these two screws at the top and bottom of the device. So if we remove those, this will allow us to remove half of the external chassis. Unlike my video, which may or may not already be live, that featured the DS220 Plus, dismantling the chassis is actually a bit easier than that of the 220. The 220 seemed to be a far more closed unit than what we see here in the 720. Now, before we remove the back area there, make sure you remove your trays. If you have storage media inside, do take care and make note of which drives are in which bay. If you're using an SHR, it won't make any difference which bay you put the drives back into, but don't take the risk. And of course, make sure you've got a backup in place of your data. So once you've removed the bays and removed those two screws, you can slide the unit apart like this. It's going to be a bit of a clunk, like that. And as you can see there, the device does get removed and the tray removed sideways there. And then you can remove the side panel there, and that is half of the front panel of your Synology NAS, and we'll pop that there. Now inside we can see the internal framework of our device. The light may bounce a little bit there. Now that's the internal framework chassis there of our NAS, where our bays live, along with the clips there that hold the trays in place, and we've got the NVMe bays there, as well as that rear USB port there funneled into an extension there from the main controller board. If we look inside even further, we can see the other connections. We'll get a better look at those inside in just a moment. But the next thing we want to do is remove the two screws at each corner of this device. These screws hold both the framework to the main board cover and the board cover to the external plastic mount. On top of that, there is brackets here that hold the main back area and the fan in place to that chassis. So we have got two screws at each corner to remove, and then we have the main bracket there at the top. So let's remove that bracket first and go there. Remove the next screw from the top. And again, I do apologise that this is quite close to the mic. but that clip comes off nice and easy like that. Next, you put that down, remove that screw. Then we can go ahead and remove all 4 of these screws from the base of the device. Once again, strongly recommend a magnetic screwdriver while doing this, because a lot of these screws, you don't want them falling into the chassis like that first screw that I just had there. And again, I apologise if the thumps and the bumps while I'm doing this are being kind of emulated there against the mic. I'm really sorry about that, but there's not a vast amount I can do with that in this current setup. So we're going to remove all 4 of those screws. Going to go there. It's also worth highlighting that if this device is anything like the Synology DS720 Plus dismantle that we did in a previous video, then chances are what we're going to find here is some chips. We're going to find 4 Samsung memory modules all connected to the main controller board. They're soldered on directly. It won't be a SODIMM port. Going there, let's mute you in the background. Let's go there. Remove the next screw. And again, the front mounted screws are quite tight. You will need quite a long screwdriver to get into them. This is quite a well separated device internally, but there's no avoiding the fact that you do need quite a long screwdriver to get into some of these slightly tighter crevices. So have a look, get there. And now we can slowly start to remove this device from its base level connection. You can have a look there. We can see there, if we slightly move it out, we've got 1 more screw there just underneath the USB port there. So do make sure you get that, you don't forget it like I almost did. And that's the one that keeps the main base of the chassis connected to that. Now, let's move that there for the rear screws. As you can see, we've now removed the main body of the chassis from that fan area. Now, bear in mind, there is a fan connector. So if I rotate this device for you guys, you can see there that small little white connector that holds the fan connected to the main controller assembly. So the 2 things you need to do here are 1, remove and unplug that fan connector, and then inside you will spot that silver tape. Now that silver tape that is playing merry hell with my lighting rig here, you need to slowly remove that to therefore avoid snapping the power connector there. So go ahead with that, remove there, and now we've removed the second half of this external chassis. There's the fan that's got the power removed, and we can move that there, and we can take a good look at the rest of this device at this stage. Now, as you can see, we have got those 2 NVMe SSD bays there into the base of the device. If we look at the complete base controller board, we can take a good look at what runs our Synology NAS. So we have got at the top there, we've got a CMOS battery there just to remember the settings. We also have a flash there, and this flash is where the preset version of DSM arrives with this device. A small module there. And finally, we have got a large heatsink that covers that Intel Celeron, the J4125 processor under there. It's not an active cooling fan, but it is a large heatsink that keeps things nice and cool. All around, of course, there are loads of chips that run the body of the device on this larger PCB here. So if we bring that there nice and close, you guys can take a good look there. And now we can start removing that main controller board from the assembly here. Now, there are 4 screws at either corner of this device. Let's bring that up. Each one of these screws holds the main PCB down to the system itself. So if we pop that there, start to remove the screws one by one. Again, screw number 1. And again, there should be a complete photographic breakdown of this stripping of the DS720 below in a link to NAS Compares, so I recommend you check that out. But again, removing those. And this should detach the main controller board from the base connector there. There is two separate PCIe's that connect to the NVMe board and the main controller board to the internal SATA connectors there. But the PCIe connection, the USB connection on the side looks like it will require removal. So if you have a look, you can see these two connectors here. They connect that USB 3 port to this cable here. Now this cable appears to be glued here. So rather than try to detach the glued connector, we should set about removing this USB port. So let's go ahead and turn this on its side and start to detach that USB connector. Now this does open the question of, is it possible to get USB 3.1 Gen 2 as a connector on this device? If we have a look there, so that's screwed fully out. Look there, remove that. There we go. And now we can slide out our USB connector. And then from there, we just need to detach both of the separate PCIe connected boards that connected both the M.2 NVMe connector there with that PCIe and the second connector there at the top that connected the two SATA connected hard drives to the main controller board. Now you can see there that additional heatsink there. Let's bring that there so the light isn't going bananas. And that connector is on the underside of the main CPU. But the first thing that will strike you about this device are those 4 chips there at the top. Now those 4 chips there are our memory. They are the main memory modules of the DS720. This board here is the upgrade slot that we've always had access to. If we bring it nice and close, and again, there should be details in the link to NAS Compares below where we're detailing all of the modules inside here. I know they are Samsung modules of memory. We've talked about that in previous videos. Alongside that, we've got more information on these controller boards and how the SATA connectors connect with this device. Basically, how your storage media gets inside. Now, the SATA connector, as you can see there, is directly connected to the internal board. It's just that USB that has this little extension part connected, and ultimately this is largely what we expected from this device. It's got the main controller breakdown chip there of the 720 based at the bottom there, but for the most part everything else is largely similar to that of the 220. It's just the enhanced internal CPU and those memory modules there. Now each memory module, it doesn't really dictate how much is on each chip, but given that we're looking at a device that has 2 gig of memory, I think we can ascertain that each one of those is going to be 512. On top of that, the rest of the controller system seems exactly what we'd expect. So that has been my breakdown of the Synology DS720 Plus. As mentioned, there is a full breakdown in NAS Compares via the link in the description. If you want to learn more about this device, do click subscribe and do check out my other articles and videos on the new range of Synology NASes. Click subscribe if you want to learn about new things that are happening in NAS throughout the year, and of course click subscribe to support this channel. Click like if you've enjoyed the video so I know to keep doing these, and I'll see you next time.